How do? Me again. I'm going to try a new thing. The last couple of years, I've tried to do this 52 game challenge that a lot of people do, where the goal is to just finish 52 games in a year. I did it for a couple of years, no problem. My sort of work schedule changed, and I'm finding it harder to keep up. So instead of trying to go for the 52, I'm just trying to keep tabs on everything I do play, keep a record of it. And I figured the best way to sort of share my kind of opinions on these games, if anybody even cares, which even if they don't, I'm kind of doing it for me, is to just do like a monthly kind of roundup of what I've been playing. Some months it might even be one game, some months it'll be more. I've had a week off work this month, so I say this month, I mean January, because this it's going to be the end of the month looking back. So we're starting off fresh in 2025, in January 2025. I did have a week off in January, so there was a couple of games got finished in that week, and a couple of little carryovers from last year that I didn't quite get finished last year that I finished this year, so I thought I'd care to mention them, mainly because one of them is one of the greatest games ever made in my opinion. Before I get started with this, yes, I've made notes. Before I get started with this, as well as like my monthly roundups of my own, I'm hoping to potentially get just dotted around sort of in the series, sort of like sub-episodes with other people, where they might want to talk about games they've been playing. If there's something you're interested in, let me know on any of like usual channels, and we'll try and make something happen. It's not going to be a live thing, it's just going to be a pre-recorded little chat, one-on-one, me with somebody else, and them telling me what they've played through, and hopefully I'll be able to give a bit of conversation back as well if it's something I've played as well. So if that's something you might be interested in, let me know. It doesn't have to be modern, it doesn't have to be retro, it doesn't have to be AAA. Let's put it this way, it can be modern, can be retro, can be AAA, can be indie, can be a mobile phone game, can even be a FIFA or something if you can talk about it with as much passion as, if you can talk about it with passion, should I say, for any length of time. Just let me know and we'll sort something out and try and get a bit of conversation going. I've got a couple of people lined up, hopefully, so we'll see if that happens, shall we? So we'll cast your mind back to the tail end of 2024. I decided in the possibly the stupidest move ever, when I had 6 games, I think, that I needed to finish. No, 8 games I needed to finish to make the 52 mark, because I ended up the year with 44 games completed. I decided my 45th one to play over my busiest time of the year at work, the Christmas period. I decided to play a bit of Red Dead Redemption 2, probably one of the most in-depth sort of everything kind of games that exists. The game that you can probably beat, that you could easily just while away 200 plus hours in just farting about doing stuff. There's so much to find in that game. I think it is the 3rd time I've played through Red Dead 2. Played it on the played the PS4 version, but I played it on the PS5. There is no PS5 upgrade, sadly, but to be honest, it still looks better than a lot of PS5 games do, crazily. It's just such a polished piece of software. Yeah, I know that it was my 3rd time through before, and this time was the first time, spoilers, by the way. There's going to be heavy spoilers for pretty much everything I talk about on this, so if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this. But spoilers for this. Arthur, your main character, gets sick and unfortunately passes away at the end of the game, and this is my 3rd time through it, and for the first time I noticed the actual pinpoint moment when he gets sick. You're shaking down a guy for some money he owes you, and he says he's ill, and then he coughs blood onto your face, and it's like, oh, that's obviously the time when Arthur gets his tuberculosis. And I know this is probably a widely known thing, but it was the first time I really picked up on it, and it kind of put a downer on the game from an earlier moment than I'm used to. Not that the whole emotional aspect of it really adds to the game anyway, but it's like it puts things into a new perspective when you know that Arthur's sick from an earlier time. But yeah, a couple of little bits. I say this is one of the most polished games ever made, but there are a couple of little bits. I don't know if it's because I'm playing it essentially emulated on a PS5, but there's a sort of random quest you can find where you'll find a woman on the side of the road and a horse has dropped dead and she needs a lift into town, and the horse is called Biscuit, and she tells you about how Biscuit's been like the most loyal horse, and one time she was in the mountains and she went for a nap somewhere and she woke up and there was some guy trying to rob her, and Biscuit came up and bit his ear off and then booted him up the backside when he tried to run away and saved her life, and her husband just said, well, you shouldn't have been there anyway. Right, the reason why I can recount that story so well is because this quest happened 4 times in my playthrough. I'm pretty sure even by the end of it Arthur sounded kind of annoyed by it. It's the first time I've noticed that, just like little random quests repeating themselves. I'm not going to go too far into Red Dead because it's such an old game and everyone pretty much who's going to play it has played it. But I think if you haven't played it, and I know people get a lot of perceptions about Rockstar games just being violence simulators and crime simulators, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Grand Theft Auto 5 in particular are revolutionary games. Even now, GTA 5 is 2 generations old, and it still packs so much into the world that it's in. It's not just about beating up hookers and robbing people and shooting people and stuff. It's like GTA 5, for instance, it's got a fully fledged golf game, a tennis game, racing. Can't remember if there's darts in 5, but I know there is in 4. It's just, there's so much to do in these games, and Red Dead Redemption 2 as well. It's like it's got as much in common with things like Skyrim and stuff like that as it has with Grand Theft Auto. It's about exploring and just finding things and just doing things, and they've both got quite mature storylines. GTA 5 not so much. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the most mature, deep, emotional stories in any game ever created, in my opinion. So give these games a chance. They're not just violence sims. They're not just their Daily Mail baiting bollocks. You know, it's so worth playing these games. They are huge. They are technically so impressive. And I honestly think anyone who likes an experience in their game, I say experience to mean not just like an arcadey kind of thing or a retro style game. There's nothing wrong with that. But for those who like kind of like a sort of multimedia experience, like a sort of movie within the game, please try these games out if you haven't, because they are virtually perfect, both of them, in my opinion. So the first full-fledged game that I played in this year, essentially in January, start to finish, was a game I got for Christmas, and that is the absolutely incredible Astrobot on the PS5. I am not a big 3D platform guy. I'm not a big 2D platform guy either. I say that in a way that I love platforming in sort of the style of Tomb Raider or Prince of Persia, or, you know, the aspects of it that are included in like Uncharted and Assassin's Creed. But just, you know, your basic bog standard jumping on blocks and stuff like that kind of platformers are not for me. But I absolutely loved the pack-in game you got with the PS5, Astro's Playroom. And when I played that, I said back then that this is like one of the best, even though it's only like an hour long, it's one of the best platformers I've ever played. And if they released a full-length version, then, you know, shut up and take my money. But lo and behold, they did with Astrobot, and it is incredible. I do want to point out though that it while it is absolutely incredible as a platformer, it's still not perfect. There's still like your camera issues and stuff that you get with, like, you know, your angles and stuff. I played through Croc last year on the PS1, and although I love Croc, I always have done, I had like camera issues with that for some of the platforming segments, and I had the same issues with this. But aside from that, this is near as damn perfect for a platform game as I've ever had. The main character, Astro, is... At first I was kind of I pushed back against it a little bit, you know, when I first saw, like, the VR, what's it called now? Astro's Rescue Mission, I think. I've barely played that, I only played a little bit of VR, it's just not for me. But, yeah, I pushed back against Astro a little bit because I'm an old school Sackboy fan. I've never really been a big fan of Little Big Planet, but I love Sackboy as a character. I found him so sort of adorable, really, and kind of emotive with his faces and stuff like that. I loved the way, like, the costumes for different characters and, you know, immediately recognisable they were. And our Sackboy was kind of like a sort of like essentially like a blank slate for them, but also had his own sort of cheekiness and appeal. And Playing through Astrobot, I don't think I can see why they've kind of put Sackboy to the back burner now and brought Astro into the front, because he's so like it's weird to say for what is essentially his face is just a black screen with two eyes, but he's so charismatic, it's untrue. It's hard not to fall in love with this robot. I really want. I've seen like Astro plushes. I've got a Sackboy plush already. I don't know where he's kicking about. I think he's on the chair down there. I really want an Astro plush to go with him now because I've just fallen in love with that little robot. He's kind of like Sackboy times 1,000. It's Sackboy for the sort of new generation, if it can be. The absolutely wonderful thing about this game is that every single thing in it is an Easter egg. It's timed so well to come out with the PlayStation 30th anniversary because like there's so many little just nods to older games. The main sort of aim of the game is to rescue stranded robots that are knocking around, and you get these VIP robots which are all like dressed as characters from previous, not just PlayStation games, just previous games. It's like you've got your Sony stuff. They kind of make a big deal about Uncharted, God of War, Loco Roco for some reason, which is we do need a new Loco Roco game though. That is one series that needs to make a resurgence, but that for some reason that's had a lot of attention in this game. What was I saying? Uncharted, God of War, Loco Roco, Horizon. What was the fifth one? I'm sure there's a fifth one. But yeah, these like kind of the big PlayStation franchises all have Ape Escape. For some reason, again, I thought that was kind of a dead franchise. They all have their own sort of game levels based on those characters and those games, and sort of the mechanics of the game change. Like on the Ape Escape one, instead of rescuing the robots, you have to catch them with the net. And there's like in the Loco Roco one, it goes to a 2D side scroller, and you're using the I've got one to hand the 6-axis, and you're sort of tilting it to tilt the screen and roll the characters about. It's really well thought out. But then on top of that, there's like within levels, there's like characters from like The Last of Us. There's characters like from other Sony things like Medieval, characters that have been part of Sony's history like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro that are no longer part of it. And then other things sort of like multi-platform stuff that you wouldn't expect to be in there. Capcom have got a big presence in there. There's Resident Evil characters, there's Street Fighter characters, there's Okami characters, Monster Hunter, I believe, a few other Capcom, no Mega Man, which is a surprise. You can randomly find a Pyramid Head from Silent Hill. There's Metal Gear as well for the Konami ones. Devil May Cry again for Capcom. There's like so many different franchises. There's like deep cuts. Like you can find a robot which is heads like the stage from Intelligence Cube. There's one from Devil Dice. It's real deep cuts back into the PlayStation library, and it's like just every little thing is an Easter egg, and it's so good. I almost 100% at this game, I'm not going to lie. The main game, the main sort of story levels don't offer much of a challenge. It's a lot of insta-death, but you just into infinite lives brought straight back, and it's great. There are some kind of like extracurricular levels which are insanely hard because it's so much insta-death and there's no checkpoints within the levels, so you have to do it in one run. And I have done a few of those, but I kind of thought this might, for someone like me who plays casually for fun, rather than to test themselves and get better and better and stuff like that. Again, nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with either of those things. Gaming is for everyone. For me, it wasn't worth doing that because I would probably end up not enjoying the game. And it all sort of culminates all the sort of like PlayStation kind of. I'm jumping backwards and forwards here, but all like the PlayStation like Easter eggs and stuff all culminates in the last level, which is kind of like it kind of goes through the generations. It's like a sort of Star Fox kind of shooting section, and you start off with all the PS1s around, all the PS1 stuff around you. It moves on to PS2, moves on to PS3, moves on to PS4, and it's just it is just such a massive celebration of PlayStation. And if you're a big old PlayStation fanboy like I am, not just a PlayStation fanboy, but PlayStation's always been my main console. It's a must-have. I'm going to say it is a must-own for PlayStation owners. The last thing I want to say is it makes absolutely great use of motion controls, which you don't see a lot of nowadays. I mentioned earlier about the Loco Roku thing with Loco Roku? Loco Roco. It's nothing to do with a streaming device. Yeah, I mentioned it about that with the motion controls, like tilting the levels. There's things you can get, like you can get different power-ups and stuff. Like one of them's got claws you can use to climb, and it's like you have to sort of attach with the left, like attach your left hand with the left trigger, then tilt your body up with that. Press the right trigger to attach your right hand, let go of the left trigger, tilt your body that way and stuff to climb. Just little things like that. It's really good use of the motion controls. Makes full use of the controller in every way, which a lot of games don't, which is understandable if they're multi-platform, because why are they going to do all this magic stuff when you can't do it on the Xbox? In conclusion, for the last two games I've talked about, there's been a lot of talk I've read recently, on like Instagram posts and Reddit posts and stuff like that, where a lot of people are saying that modern AAA games are soulless and heartless and don't have any love put into them. It's not true. You're just talking about things like COD and that. Anyone who thinks that AAA modern games lack love and passion need to play Astrobot. There is so much love and passion for everything PlayStation in that. And Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, because there's so much gone into that game. So moving on to the next one, this is a game I never didn't finish. I've actually shelved it, but with scope to come back to it, because it's a series that me and my wife, we've always gone through together. And essentially we've got a couple of weeks off in March, so we want to devote at least the first week of that essentially into playing this game, and that is Life is Strange Double Exposure. I'm not going to lie, I'm not enjoying what I've played of it. I've only played sort of half an hour to an hour of it before putting it down and hoping to go back to it later. But I never do enjoy this series at the start, and then it gets its hooks in. It always starts with a sort of light-hearted, hey, we're Gen Z, we're hipsters, and this is how we talk and do things and stuff. And then the harrowing stuff starts, usually towards the end of the first episode, and that's when it gets good. But yeah, it's so cringy. It's I've written down in my notes, do young people really talk like this? It's like everyone you speak to is so sort of laser focused on one thing. You're in this bar and it's there's a couple sat there. Well, for a start, you've got to you've got to woo this woman who works behind the bar, because at the risk of sounding anti-woke, which I'm really not, of course you're a lesbian, because these games are all about box ticking. I'm absolutely fine with female characters in games. I'm absolutely fine with gay and lesbian characters in games. I'm absolutely fine with black and Asian and all different colours of people and different races of people in games. I will play as anybody, but these ones it feels forced. So anyway, yeah, you're trying to woo this barmaid, and there's a couple sat there in the a couple of students sat there in the corner, and you talk to those, and I can't remember what they're talking about, but it's everyone is laser focused on one thing. There'll be people say there'll be a band. It's always a really cringy name of a band, like the Vampire Cadets or something. And you'll be like, hey, have you heard about the Vampire Cadets? Well, the person you'll talk to will be like, have you heard about the Vampire Cadets? There's a Vampire Cadets show in town today. Oh, I've been really meaning to check out the Vampire Cadets. It's they're all laser focused on one thing. You'll meet somebody who's into there'll be someone who'll be into Captain Awesome, the superhero, and he'll be you'll go up to him and they'll be like, have you read the latest issue of Captain Awesome? And then your character will be like, oh wow, I love Captain Awesome. And then they'll sing the Captain Awesome theme tune at each other. And every time you see them after that, they're like, hey, look at my Captain Awesome action figure. Do young people really talk like this? Do they laser focus on one thing? Do they constantly name drop? Are they so overly enthusiastic about everything? It's really cringy. I've written down it's a quiet rural town, but everybody's gay. Which is the same as the last one, Life is Strange True Colours. Quiet rural mountain town, everyone's gay and everyone's accepting of that, which is great. It's how life should be, but it's not how life is. Conversely, though, the people who made the original Life is Strange games don't nod. They also made Tell Me Why, Ain't Nothing But a Heartbreak, on the Xbox, which is the same sort of game. It's just not officially in the series because Square Enix got the rights to the series. And on that one, you play as a trans character, and that trans character is so... They do have to deal with people not being accepting of them. but they are so aggressive and toxic about it that it makes you sort of empathise with the people who don't like them, if you get what I mean. Really miswritten as a character. That's a tangent. So I'm not giving up on Life is Strange. I am going back to it in March. So in a couple of months' time, you'll probably hear more about this. Maybe, I don't know if I'll have it finished in time for the March episode of this. It might be the April one, but I'm actually thinking maybe me and Susie, my wife, might actually just come and just focus on this one game and discuss it as a bonus episode. You never know. It all depends on whether it can be asked to carry on. So shelf for now. I'm kind of doing these in order of when I either finished them or stopped playing them, and this was another one that I've been playing since before Christmas. It's on the Evercade, and it is Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, on the Legacy of Kain collection. It's a game that I think I probably bought about 18, 19 years ago on the PS1. I remember at the time the PS2 was in like full-fledged in its lifespan. And I went back and bought this on the PS1 because I loved Soul Reaver, and I loved Soul Reaver 2 and Blood Omen 2 and Defiance. And I thought, well, I need to go back and start the series. So I bought Legacy of Kain, Blood Omen Legacy of Kain on the PS1. I remember going on eBay and paying £40 for it and thinking, Jesus Christ, that's expensive for a PS1 game. How little did I know when I was like, because I was picking that up and I'd not long since spent £15 on a copy of Symphony of the Night in Game Station. How little did I know that those games are going to like just pile up in value. But yeah, I did sit and finish it when I first got it, and then I've never really played it much since, because it's batshit crazy how hard it is. Batshit, I suppose Bat's a pun, is it? Bat, Vampire Bat, Dracula, I don't know. So this was the second time I've ever sat through and played this, and it is still amazing. Completely ignoring Soul Reaver, just Blood Omen. I am going to go and play through Soul Reaver, even though the remaster's coming. I've pre-ordered the physical copy of that, so I'm not going to get that till very late on this year, because I've ordered the collector's edition. Spoilers for pickups later on. Yeah, it's still amazing. It's still hard as hell, but it doesn't feel punishing in a way where it's not your fault, if you get what I mean. More on that in a little bit in a different game. The combat is, while there's no such thing as like dodging and ducking and stuff, and it is a case of you hit them quickly before they hit you, you are able to sort of get your jabs in there first, which will sort of disturb their attacks and stuff like that, and a lot of the time if you time it right you can just win through as much as you can call it skill. So it is still hard as hell, but it doesn't feel like it's not your fault, if you get what I mean. I didn't realise at the time when I played this because I was quite young, but the Legacy of Kain series is packed up with so much lore over the course of the 5 games, and a lot of that lore is the seeds are planted in Blood Omen, and I didn't really sort of realise this at the time. There's so much world building, so much storytelling in this game, and it's made me sort of thirsty to play through the rest of the series, which I probably will do. So yeah, I expect more Legacy of Kain over the course of this year. One thing I can probably recommend if anyone plays this for the first time is bang your headphones on, because the sort of sound, the music and the sound are so like atmospheric, and sort of like the stereo sounds of things coming from different directions and stuff. It's really well done for quite an early PS1 game, so yeah, fully recommend playing it with your headphones on. Don't dismiss this. If you're finding it difficult, persevere. It's one of the best games on the Evercade. It's one of the best games on the PS1. I probably will say Soul Reaver's better, but Blood Omen is incredible, and it's great to see where Kain began, because you see it right from the start of his unlife, so to speak. The next one is one of the sort of big games that it's probably the first big game I played this year. It was a game that came out at the sort of, I think it was around the midpoint of last year, and I just didn't get around to getting it. Got it for Christmas, and that is the remake of Silent Hill 2 on the PS5, and it is brilliant. It really is. It's not my favourite in the series. I know for a lot of people Silent Hill 2 is the favourite in people's eyes, but in mine it's probably the sort of the 5th best in the series. I'm talking the originals, of course. Behind, in no particular order, 1, 3, Origins and Shattered Memories, which is sort of a remake of 1, a reimagining kind of thing. So I'm not that overly familiar with it. I think I probably have played through it 3 times. I played through it because I know I played through it on the PS2. I know I've played through it on the PS3 on the HD remaster, and I'm pretty sure I've done something in the middle of that because I know I've seen the dog ending on the original version as well. So I think maybe 3 times, maybe 4, I don't know. But I'm not as massively familiar with it as I am with, say, the first one, which I've played through probably, well into double figures how many times I played through the first Silent Hill game. Because I'm not as up on the events of the second game, this feels really familiar, but yet I've heard a lot of people say that a lot of it's been changed. So yeah, the whole feeling of it, and I believe the map isn't even in the same layout, but things happen in different locations sort of thing, all feels so familiar, but they've done things to it, if you get what I mean. I had worries about a third person camera behind Resident Evil style camera view, because I was very fond of the fixed camera points in the original Silent Hill games and how they helped build tension if you couldn't quite see what was around the next corner or something like that, or each sort of showed you a glimpse of what was coming and stuff like that. So I was kind of thought, just a camera behind your body, it would like a fixed camera. No, not. Is it a fixed camera? Which one's a fixed camera? The fixed camera views on the originals are like when the camera sort of panned out and was in one place and you'd sort of run around the screen. This is a camera that's fixed behind you, a la the Resident Evil remakes. Yeah, I was concerned about that at the time, but it really works well. Especially with the way how the combat works in this one, because in the last one you'd equip a melee weapon or you'd equip a gun and you'd play it like Resident Evil. You'd hold one shoulder button to aim, another shoulder button to fire, or the square button to fire, or whatever, or you'd hold a shoulder button to ready thing and the square button to attack. On this one it's essentially you have a gun and a melee weapon, and you only have one melee weapon at a time. You have those equipped at the same time, and you hold down the left shoulder button. Again, let's use physical props, shall we? You hold down the left shoulder button to aim, and you hold the right button to fire your gun. Or you can press circle to melee. You start with like a 2x4, and then you upgrade to a lead pipe later on. It's not the circle button to melee, sorry. It's if you're not aiming, it's the R2 to attack. Your circle button is a dodge, which is a new function, which works really well, but it's obviously, they've kind of gone down the let's be a bit Dark Soulsy route with the combat, which doesn't always sit right with me. It works really well with this one because the enemies kind of telegraph their attacks a bit, so it's easy to... I say easy, it was quite near the end of the game when I started doing fights without taking damage, but you can sort of see what they're going to do. You can dodge out of the way. You can, you learn that nurses will attack a few times in quick succession, so you have to keep dodging until they've finished and then get them. You learn to, when the corset guys, when they start to spit at you, you can see when they're going to build up to do it, so you can duck to the side. Things like that. It makes for satisfying combat, and a lot of the time I did just use melee. Especially with the nurses, because they're constantly moving their heads and stuff. It's kind of hard to get a headshot. You do headshots. It doesn't kill automatically, but it does hurt them quite a bit more than shooting in the body. There are enemies without heads, like the kind of 2 mannequin guys that run at you, but they don't take many. Yeah, they're easy to shoot and they don't take much to put them down. So yeah, combat is good, but the game, conversely, is too combat heavy, and I've spoke to a couple of people about this and everyone's agreed there is just too much combat in this. Silent Hill's never been about the combat, to the point where, like in Shattered Memories, there isn't any combat. It's same in the short message that came out earlier last year. No combat in that either. It's more about psychological horror, so it's kind of, there is a little bit too much combat in this, and with the enemies in the original, they couldn't follow you through doors and stuff. You could easily sort of duck past them, go into a door and be safe if you knew there weren't any enemies in that room. On this one, they'll follow you about, they'll follow you through doorways and things, so you don't really have much of a choice. When you're in an enclosed area, at least. When you're in the streets, you find when you're in an enclosed area, at least, you have to basically put down every enemy. Otherwise, they're going to keep coming, and it's going to get very annoying. It's a little bit stressful when you're trying to get from like A to B in places, though. and you've only got a certain amount of health drinks, you've only got a certain amount of ammo, and you know there's going to be like tons of enemies between you and where you need to get. If you're out on the streets, it's alright, you can sort of duck behind cars and they'll not notice, but it gets stressful later on when you're like in the prison, especially, or in the labyrinth, and you're like, I need to get over there. I know for a fact some enemies will also respawn, so you know for a fact there's going to be enemies, and you've got to fight them. And you might be sort of down in your health drinks, you might be down in your ammo, and you can get through them with melee attacks, but it makes it more like you're going to take damage and you'll need to heal. It's a lot quicker just to put them down with a gun, but then you'll lose your ammo. So it's just like things like that work out quite stressful for me. But that is probably intentional because it builds up the tension of the game, doesn't it? That's probably what they want to do. The downside to it is the music isn't as iconic. They've re-recorded a lot of the music, and one of my favourite pieces of music in any game is the theme of Laura, or Laura's theme from Silent Hill 2. It was originally done by, composed by Akira Yamaoka, who composed the music for a lot of really cool sort of atmospheric horror games. Like, he did the first few Silent Hill games. He did Shadows of the Damned, stuff like that. It's sort of like old school, kind of almost western sounding, really echoey electric guitars, and then like old fashioned instruments like violins and mandolins and stuff like that. It makes it sound very eerie. But yeah, I don't know if he did the music for this, but they definitely re-recorded the music, and it's not as good, and it just doesn't have the same, it doesn't evoke the same emotions. I was very disappointed when the game ended and the theme of Laura started playing, and it was awful. Conversely, though, the voice acting's great. Especially, I've not written down the name. It's I remember the last name was Gunnarsdottir, because it's a very Nordic name. The woman who plays Mary and Maria. I thought her voice acting was incredible because she didn't just deliver the words as you just read them off a script. She had different sort of inflections in her voice, which sounded odd the way she was talking, but it gave her sort of character, and I did really think the voice acting on the whole was great. Absolutely loved the game though, from start to finish. It was one of those games where I kind of, when I wasn't playing it, I was thinking about when am I next going to get to play it, which doesn't happen very often nowadays. Really hope they remake more, at least the first three. I don't know, because it's 2 generations ago now, really 3 generations ago really, when they made Silent Hill Shattered Memories, which was kind of a remake of the first one. So I don't know if that counts as the remake series, but I'd like for them to remake 1 and 3, definitely, and I would lap those up, especially 1, if they remade it a bit more faithfully than Shattered Memories. Shattered Memories was great, but they took a lot of liberties. So yeah, absolutely loved Silent Hill 2. Very, very good. I also want to point out that this was developed by Bloober Team, which are a Polish design company, I think. They also made The Medium, which, if you've played The Medium, that is a love letter to Silent Hill. It's got so many themes that are similar to Silent Hill. It's a horror game about a paranormal investigator, but there's so many themes in that game, sort of of duality and double worlds, child abuse, other things like that, just lifted straight from Silent Hill and put into this game, which is an absolute sort of labour of love. I'm guessing they were the right team, obviously, to make another Silent Hill game. They should just employ them to make all of them from now on. It'd make for a streamlined experience. The next one I played was on the Neo Geo. I've kind of got a mission to play through a lot of beat-em-up games, and this one was one that I pulled out at random from my gaming list to play on the Neo Geo, but I played through it on my Ambinic. I've got nothing to show for it because it was a dirty pirated ROM. Hold my hands up at that. And it's Sengoku, which is a very weird beat-em-up. You play as 2 guys. You don't choose your character. It's just like player 1 plays as 1, player 2 plays as the other. The names of the characters that you play as are, and I found this hilarious, it's Ninja Dave and Cowboy Kev. And it's like you start off in the streets like any other beat-em-up game, but The enemies are all sort of like feudal Japanese, like samurais and stuff like that, oni, like, you know, Japanese demons, things like that. Like really old-fashioned looking enemies and stuff. And then every so often you'll kind of fly up to the air into like a cloud world where there'll be tons of enemies to fight, and you probably rescue somebody, and they'll become part of you, and you can sort of morph into them and kind of things like that. Instead of changing different characters, you can literally morph into another character with a different skill set. It's weird as hell, and I didn't like it. I'll also put out there that it's really fucking difficult as well. I finished it. I'm counting it as finished, but I probably, if it was on the arcades, I would have probably spent about £200 on the credits for that. Yeah, it's not good. It's not a good example of a Neo Geo game, or b a beat 'em up game. I talked briefly on Instagram to Champion 2D Rob about it, and he says that Sengoku 2 is also a bit crap, but Sengoku 3 is good, so we'll see, hopefully, in the future. The next one, I've not written any notes for this, so I'm going to keep it brief. It's another game that I gave up on. This time I've got no intentions of ever going back to it because it was so bad. And that is Squirrel with a Gun. How can this be bad? It's just one of those games where you see it, or at least someone with my kind of adult brain sees it and thinks, well, if it just does what it says on the tin, that's going to be great. Got this from my mum for Christmas. What it is like a sort of sandbox kind of game on a similar vein to Goat Simulator, but it's also set out more like a 3D platformer, which is great, but the movement is so erratic. Like, you move so quickly and the camera is so bad that it's hard to keep track of where you're going. There's no sort of like pressing the button lightly for a small jump or pressing it hard for a long jump. Every jump is just a long jump. The camera does not focus on where you're going to land at all, so platforming onto different blocks and stuff is mentally hard. There's also a slight delay from pressing the jump button to actually jumping, so a lot of the time you run straight off the edge. And it infuriated me to no end. I persevered with it for a couple of hours until I finally hit a boss fight against a guy in a tank, and I'm in a little radio-controlled car, and I've got to drive around in the car and shoot the wheels off the tank. So all the time you're not actually looking where you're going in the car, and you just get stuck on scenery. So many times I actually warped underneath. I clipped underneath the tank and got stuck under the tank. The camera clips into your head or into your tail, so you can just see the inside of your character model. Not only that, but every time you die on this boss fight, you start from the beginning of the boss fight again, and there's this stupid nu metal song playing in the background about stick to your guns or something, and it's by the worst sort of hardcore nu metal, it's like a sort of post-hardcore kind of / nu metal band, and they've got this guy who's doing his best at screaming like a sort of Chester Bennington wannabe, accompanied by a woman doing a best sort of Amy Lee impression, singing away, like warbling away in the background. She's singing a completely different tune to what the guitarist is playing, so it's just fucking mental. And every time you die, this song starts again. I'm sorry if this is a bit more rambly, because I've not made any notes on this game because I just didn't want to even think about it. This is the closest thing to a rage quit I've ever done. I know it's an indie game. It's made by a very small team of people, but you get games, indie games. Stardew Valley was made by one person. There's Celeste. There's Braid. There's frickin' Untitled Goose Game, which are made by similarly tiny teams, and these games are fantastic. I tend to find, though, when a game like this tries to do more, than tries to have ideas of its station, put it that way. I'm looking back at Daymare 1998, when they're trying to make a AAA style game on an indie budget, on an indie team, and on indie kind of understanding of the hardware, it never goes well. And I don't believe, if they're expecting you to pay for the game, I don't believe you should cut them slack, really. It wasn't a full price game. I got it for Christmas, but I think it was about 25 quid. So it wasn't a full price game, but still, for £25, you'd expect better in terms of actual gameplay ability. Very good concept, just very poorly executed, to the point where it actually ruined my whole night when I played it. My wife was constantly asking if I was alright, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine, it's just this game's pissed me off. I've already mentioned the next game on my pile. I started playing it on the same night because I needed something that I knew was going to make me happy, and a game that's made me very happy in the past. I decided to then move on to my last game I'm going to talk about this time, and that's Untitled Goose Game. Played through this on 2 sittings. I forgot how short it was actually. When it first came out, I played it on the Switch. I'd got it digitally, but I picked it up physically on the PS4 last year because, well, it's a good game, isn't it? It's one of those games I felt like I should own. I played through the whole thing over 2 nights and did all the extra quests apart from the speedrun ones because I just couldn't be arsed with that. I forgot how short it was. It's only a couple of hours long, but it's so nice and calm and relaxing, and it looks nice with like the very simplified artwork. It feels so quintessentially British, despite the fact that it's made by House Games, I think it is. Yeah, which are based in Melbourne, I believe, in Australia. And it is just a story about a naughty goose that wants some treasure for its collection, and you have to just travel through this quaint little British town, like English countryside town, to get to this particular piece of treasure that it wants. And it's like, you start like next to a lake, and there's a picnic basket, you go through a garden which is like being tended to by a gardener. There's like this little sort of country village where you go down the shop front, and there's like a little outside market stall thing, and then you go through these back gardens, and then you get to a pub, and it is all so English, and then finally you end up at a miniature village, model village. I used to go to these model villages when I was a kid, and I loved these model villages, and it kind of just brought everything back. It's brought back my childhood of holidaying in these quaint little towns, because we used to go camping when I was a kid. It's just quaint. Quaint is the whole word for it. It's quaint, it's hilarious. And going back to Squirrel with a Gun, I will admit that did make me laugh at times. There's things like you can unlock cosmetics for your squirrel, like different outfits and stuff, and at one point I unlocked a dress, like a woman's dress for my squirrel. And when you equip that, your squirrel, instead of running like a normal squirrel, it runs all dainty with its hands up like that. That made me laugh. There were a few things like that made me laugh. It's just the gameplay really made me angry. Goose Game makes you laugh, and it's very relaxing, and it's very simple, and it's just very well made. It's just a little sort of puzzle game where a lot of it's based on physics. You need to basically you're a goose and you're a dick, and you need to be a dick and manipulate people into doing what you want so you can progress further in the story. And that's just things like pissing people off until they open a gate to shoo you out into the next area or something like that. There's like one bit where there's this poor kid who's got glasses on and he's scared of the goose, and you have to like do things like untie his shoelaces so he falls over and his glasses come off, and you steal his glasses so he can't see where he's going and stuff like that. Then you chase him into a phone box and he locks himself in and has to get somebody to come and rescue himself. Your character is such an arsehole, but geese are. But I love that game so much. I'm going to leave it at that, actually. That's what I've been playing over the month of January. February is a short month, no time off work, so hopefully there'll be a bit less to talk about. I realise I've gone on quite a long time on this, but like I said at the start of the video, if you want to be a part of this, if you can talk about things you've been playing recently, like just 2 or 3 games that you've been playing recently, with passion, with knowledge, and you wouldn't mind just coming on, like giving up one of your evenings for a little chat with me one night, then please let me know and we'll sort something out. I'd love for you to be part of this. Everybody else otherwise, thanks for watching if you did. If you enjoy what I do, please consider sticking around. If you don't, then that's fine, and I'll hope to see you next time.